Iowa women get ready for the Sweet 16 against Colorado. We break things down. We're talking football recruiting. John Garcia is going to stop by and a look at the spring depth chart. Oh, yeah, we're breaking it down, talking football, basketball, and a whole lot more today on Locked On Hawkeyes.
Are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every single day. We are available wherever you get podcasts. Make sure to hit a 5-star rating while you're there. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Lets you know when we go live, and it gets us in front of more Hawkeye fans. We're going to be talking plenty of football today. There is a ton to get into with this football team. Spring practice has begun. We're now a couple of practices in to the 15 that they will get, all culminating on a Saturday in April, as we will wrap things up and hopefully have a whole lot more answers about this Iowa football team, what they are and what they're going to be. We will be talking about that coming up here throughout the coming weeks and months ahead, leading into the 2023 football season. An anticipated one, as Iowa really did a lot in the transfer portal. Is there still more to be done? No doubt about it. We talked about that a little bit in yesterday's episode, where still need to find help at wide receiver. I think depth at the cornerback spot are some of the places that are going to be impactful that I was going to have to get better at. We're going to talk about that, in fact, today, and we're going to take a look at the depth chart and where we're going to fill in some of those holes. We're also going to talk to John Garcia. He's going to stop by once again, talk a lot of Iowa football recruiting, looking at what they have in the upcoming class of 2024, expectations, what they're going to be. Excited to get John in here once again and talking about some of the big names that are out there, commitments that they already have, and what's the likelihood that Iowa can put together another, say, top 25 type of class this season. Certainly opportunity, a lot of good in-state kids this year. That always is something that it helps out a lot as well. So we will get into that coming up here in just a little bit with John Garcia. But kick things off with a conversation about the Iowa women's team. And we've kind of taken an analytical look at the Iowa women, their matchup with Colorado. The matchup on paper certainly is better than what they would have saw against Duke. The defensive intensity that Duke plays with, you go back and look at what that girl did in that game against Colorado with the 10 steals. Think about her. That's a little bit scary. Lock it up somebody like Caitlin Clark and just how difficult it can be for this Iowa team. So that's always kind of a lingering there. The bracket opened up. There's no two ways about it. Stanford's gone. Duke is gone. Texas is gone. Now, the problem with that is all the teams now that they are going to get ready to face, they're going to be difficult. And as today's podcast is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel and FanDuel Sportsbook, they're the official sports book of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Iowa's the betting favorite to get out of this region. They are a 5.5-point favorite right now as we look at it here going into Friday over Colorado, top side of the bracket. Here's the numbers right now from FanDuel. And I think this is just going to show you just exactly how big of a favorite this Iowa team is and what the anticipation is that they're going to get to a Final Four. Women's futures. This is to cut down the nets. Right now, Iowa's the fourth choice to win the national championship. To get to the Final Four, to win 2 more games, South Carolina, they're minus 550. If you're new to betting, that means you got to put up $550 to make $100 back. Not great odds. UConn, the second choice, minus 165 to get to the Final Four. And your third betting choice is the Iowa Hawkeyes, meaning they're minus 140. That's minus odds. You have to bet $140 just to get $100 in return. That is a significant price, and that's how big of a favorite they are. Louisville is the second choice. They are plus 310 to come out of the Seattle region that Iowa is involved in. After that, it gets to, where are they? A little bit deeper. There's Ole Miss. They're plus 550. Colorado, plus 480. In fact, they have moved up as those lines continue to adjust and change. But it just goes to show you Iowa is a big-time favorite in this game. And the anticipation is they're going to get to the Final Four for the first time in 30 years. Here's a question I have. First of all, style of play. All three of the teams that remain in their region all play physical. They're going to play tough. They are going to grind you. they're going to make it incredibly difficult for you to do what you want to do offensively. We certainly need to see Kate Martin play better offensively than what we saw her last time up, and they have to slow down on the turnovers. This cannot be a game where I was up there 17, 18, 20 turnovers. That is not the way to win against this Colorado team. It's playing sharp. It is controlling the ball. It is playing a little bit more inside of yourself. They force a ton of turnovers. And not only that, they get to ball a whole lot this season. As a team, they're averaging 10 steals a game. Clean it up there. They force almost 17 turnovers a game, a huge component as well. Big one. Looking forward to that one. And we'll have an instant reaction podcast after that one goes final on Friday evening. Coming up, we're talking with John Garcia as we break things down. Iowa football recruiting for 2024. Already a few commitments. We'll talk about them. What's on the horizon for the Hawkeyes? That's all as we continue here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Well, as we get geared up for the Sweet 16 March here, great tournament action. There's no place better than FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, FanDuel giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 in bonus bets back in your account if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything. Money line, point spreads, which team's going to be cutting down the app, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Happy to welcome in right now John Garcia, our recruiting analyst here on Locked On. John, always great catching up with you with everything going on in the world. And, well, how you been? It's been a while, and I believe our second conversation here on Locked On Hawkeyes.
Oh, it's been great. It's been great. It's a beautiful time of year, right? All the recruiting focus is coming into shape here, and of course, we got March Madness simultaneously. So a lot of looking off screen while we're typing stories these days, but it's fun, of course.
No doubt about it. So let's just start kind of at the forefront. Iowa football, obviously, 24 years of Kirk Ferentz. You know what they are, right? Going into every single year, they're probably going to be somewhere between 25 and 40 in the recruiting rankings. If it's a good year in state, maybe it'll be a good year for that. If they can hit an Illinois, a Minnesota prospect, something like that, that's a 4 or 5 star. That's going to help out. Just on the surface level, is that kind of your anticipation here as we gear up for 2024?
It kind of has to be, right? Until we are proven otherwise. Yeah, that's the ceiling or at least expectation for Iowa Hawkeye recruiting. You know, I do think as time rolls on here, I do think they'll have to stretch at some point, whether it's emphasizing the portal a little bit more or geographically from the high school recruiting perspective, going down, you know, or going further away from the Big Ten or Midwestern footprint. But we're seeing some signs of it, right? Got a quarterback committed from the state of Florida that was an early target, and it's looking like a nicer get here as time rolls on for the Ferentz collaboration up there. So I do think that's where we're at from an expectation standpoint, but it doesn't take a whole lot to start changing some of those things simultaneously, because look, your target demographic is always impressionable and very young. So to shift perception, it only takes a change or two or a lightning rod or two in that process.
Want to start with the highest rank guy, at least according to the rankings I'm looking at here, and that's Cody Fox. Now, he plays at East Buck, Winthrop, Iowa, tiny little town. Now, East Buck has been pretty good to Iowa throughout the years with the galleries coming through there back in the day, but he's a young man playing small school football. He is a 4-star. He is a top 150 player nationally. But you wonder about, acclimating yourself, not just as an offensive lineman, but also making a step up from playing 1A football and then jumping in and playing in the Big Ten. What have you seen from Cody Fox? What have you heard about this guy? Because I know he's gone to camps, he's gone to some of the national events, and he's really opened some eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where you could start to feel a little bit better about throwing 4 stars or a high ranking on a prospect like that. But I think with offensive linemen and defensive linemen in particular, if it's small school ball, it's not as big a detractor as it might be with skill positions or quarterbacks in particular. And for me as an evaluator, it's because the trenches are the trenches. If you can flash dominance consistently, it almost doesn't matter who you're playing against to a certain degree. And then beyond that, with O-linemen in particular, it's so much about the frame and the athletic profile. It's really scheme dependent, relative to where a kid might be considering. But if you, in his case, are 6'4", 285 or so, and you can move laterally, you can push to the second level with consistency and leverage, you're going to get the benefit of the doubt from evaluators. And that's something Cody Fox does incredibly well. As you mentioned, he's at East Buck, where it's a very run heavy, very run dominant offense, which is great because we don't have to wonder about, hey, can he get out in space? Can he get to the second level? Can he cut off a backside linebacker that's trying to get to the running back? Because those boxes are checked very quickly and early in an evaluation like one for Cody Fox. Now, conversely, you're more curious about pass protection. How can he retreat? How patient is he? How technically sound is he from a pass blocking standpoint? But that's where the camps and some of these other things can start to work as a bit of a supplement. So there's going to be a learning curve there whenever he does get there for good up at Iowa. But that's something that is true with almost all offensive line prospects, because most of them that are Power 5 level are just the biggest, strongest, most dominant players at their high school. So you're not going to ask them to give ground and retreat and pass protection a whole lot, especially if you like to run the football like East Buck does. So I like this evaluation right now for Iowa. These are the types of players and positions that you feel most comfortable with if they get that green light from the Hawkeyes. And that's a big part of the process as well. And using all the data points. Hey, if Iowa values you as a physical interior offensive lineman, we should probably take a second look if we're not as high on you as a recruit. So I think Cody Fox fits the profile, and I like his floor as a prospect, but the athletic profile makes me like his ceiling there simultaneously.
So 3 more in-state guys are committed. Derek Weisskopf from Williamsburg, Cam Buffington from Winfield Mount Union, and Preston Reese from Monticello. All 3 of those guys, 6'2", 6'3", 200, probably could run, probably the best athletes going through their hallways.
Yep,
and just athletes, right? Guys that you can find in there, along with another offensive lineman from Illinois, and Janowski. Of those 4 guys that I mentioned there, anybody jump out? Anybody that's popped off if you've had an opportunity to see them either in person, in camps, or even watching tape?
Well, Weisskopf on tape is kind of crazy. He does literally everything. We see him running the ball, catching the ball, everywhere on defense. And then if you really dig into him, you like the track and field background, state high jump champion, and you watch him in basketball, which is the most recent video I've seen. It's fast break dunks above the rim. So from an athletic profile standpoint, which is so important in recruiting, this is about as good as it gets, in our business. Easy blue chip recruit to evaluate there. It's more a question of where is he going to play there at Iowa. We've seen them do so well with these hybrids, these versatile players that do everything. Cooper DeJean, Riley Moss, those guys come to mind immediately from a skill position perspective. And he's got a lot of that in his game. And he's tall. He's 6'3". So I think linebacker's probably the safest bet, some sort of hybrid, because he is very physical at the point of contact. And obviously he runs incredibly well on top of it. That explosiveness will translate there. And in this day and age, a safety do-it-all type of player is really just a linebacker, a 3-down modern linebacker, because, especially in the Big Ten, you're going to face such a variety of offensive schemes that you've got to be really versatile, working forwards and working backwards. It sounds simple to say, but very hard to do and implement from a linebacker perspective. So I think his athletic profile is very intriguing.
Well, of course, the biggest one is always the quarterback, right? And that's what people want to talk about the most there. Iowa went out of their comfort zone a little bit, went down to Florida very early on. James Remser's a guy that they identified, but he is not your prototypical Iowa quarterback.
Yes.
He's got some wheels to him. Fill us in on a guy from down to your neck of the woods.
Absolutely. How about that? A dual threat, a guy you can scheme up running plays for at the quarterback position, and it's verified. James has clocked some 10.8s, some 10.9s in the 100-meter dash at 6'4", 200 plus pounds. That is as intriguing as it gets for any quarterback recruit. You got the size, you got the speed. And then I think what's really intriguing, you go back to his sophomore tape, Trent, and he was playing with a broken leg. So the toughness angle here against very good competition in Jacksonville, by the way, the toughness box is checked. And that's really, from a quarterbacking perspective, That's one we don't always get answers to until they get to the next level. It's not always so tangible there. But he's healed up, had a great junior season, and Iowa jumping in on him before that junior campaign and getting that commitment early on is looking better and better with age. Not only perceptionally because he is a dual threat, and that's so exciting for Iowa fans, I'm sure, but really just from his own perspective, he has shown a lot of growth as a true quarterback and decision maker. Not a whole lot of production passing wise, not, he's not a 30 touchdown passer, but when you put everything together, he protects the football. Just 6 turnovers as a junior, again, against really strong, high level metro competition in the state of Florida, where everybody knows he's the guy. I think that's really important. But the production in terms of moving the chains and overall yardage is there when you throw in the running, which, hey, that's what we've got to value. It's like, if we're weighing a recruiting class, you can't just look at high school recruits or the portal. You got to put them all together. And I think with a quarterback, it's not just, passing production and efficiency. How do you challenge a defense with your legs? And he scored double-digit touchdowns as a runner on top of it. So that's something you absolutely have to throw into that evaluation. And he's got another year, of course, to progress there as a passer. So I think all of the physical tools with James are really intriguing. And obviously the toughness and speed on top of it make him a guy that should create some excitement.
So when he committed, he had offers from Georgia Tech, Indiana, and Wake Forest. Not exactly the who's who. Plays at Bishop Kenny, one of the smaller, if not the smallest class, I believe, down there in Florida. Have you heard, is he going to do a little camping here? And if he does, maybe that SEC offer, maybe an ACC offer a little bit higher than Georgia Tech comes along. How willing would he be to listen from what you've heard?
I think you have to do due diligence at any position in this day and age. Outside of the Iowa bubble, the coaching carousel every year is absurd, right? Obviously your audience is well aware. Just in the conference, coordinators, head coaches, the movement is so strong and consistent that I think every recruit has to at least consider new options. But there's a difference between considering something that comes in and going out and working for those new opportunities. And there's been no indication from at least my research that James is going out and looking for these other opportunities. Now, he's going to do some camps. I know he's going to do the Elite 11 in Orlando here in a couple of weekends where we'll get another look at him. And that could potentially bring opportunities, but I don't think he's deliberately saying, hey, I'm going to go to Florida State and I'm going to go to these other schools and try to go earn a scholarship offer. I think a lot of these schools have their boards relatively set. Things can change, but I think right now he's pretty secure with Iowa. And you don't jump in so early without that thought in mind, especially as a blue chip quarterback recruit. It's going to get hectic this time of year, specifically going into your senior season. So I think it'll be pretty steady from his perspective, barring something really out of nowhere going down.
Hey, I didn't throw this one at you, and I should have, and I apologize, John, because if you haven't seen him yet, I definitely want to get your perspective because, well, he's one of my buddy's kids. Brevin Dahl plays at ADM High School here, just to the west of us in the Des Moines metro area, plays at the 3A level. In fact, they bump up to 4A this year, the second highest class this season. Running back, kind of a Swiss Army knife. A lot of people think of him maybe defensively. Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State, Iowa, all involved. Have you had an opportunity to see Brevin Dahl yet?
Not a ton, but let me tell you, two-way guys are really what you're looking for. We talked about it with Wieskamp earlier. If you've got that sort of front and backwards perspective of your opposition, it really does enhance your ceiling, regardless of where you end up there at the next level. But look, I got to do some homework here, Trent. I got to be honest with you.
Well, definitely let me know. And even if we don't do it on a podcast, I would just love to get your perspective, just because now I got that connection, right? I grew up with both of his parents, and now awesome. Seeing him be recruited, it's crazy.
What are the Hawkeyes talking to him? Is he going to camp? What's the status? Break some news for us.
Well, that's what we're working on. We're trying to get that inside scoop. So when it happens, I will tell you, Locked On Hawkeyes, if we're not the first, well, A, I'll be disappointed. But secondly, I've known Brev since he was a baby. But secondly, we'll definitely be right up there with us, the breaking news, and really a fun one to keep an eye on. One more name from the state of Iowa, Grant Brix, offensive lineman from Logan Magnolia. We're talking about another small town kid. Yep. Now, he is more of an offensive tackle. We talked about Fox, maybe an interior guy. Brix, tackle. And it's not just Iowa State, K-State, all the locals around here. But now you got Auburn sniffing around. You got the SEC out there. What have you seen from Grant Brix?
Well, he's kind of the opposite of Fox that we talked about, right? From an athletic profile and a frame perspective. And we talk about how important frame is. Now, offensively, very run dominant, right? Same type of offense. So we're getting a whole lot of leverage. But when you're doing it at 6'7", I just think it increases how people feel about you as an overall athlete. So as a top 10 national tackle recruit, it's going to open a little bit more eyeballs. And there's going to be more benefit of the doubt given to those who say, well, we'll figure out pass protection later, but I can work with 6'7" with a condor wingspan. So I think, that's going to do some good for his recruitment. Another guy who has a track and field background and has some success there as well. Another measure tangibly of his explosiveness. But you see it on Friday nights. I mean, he's flat backing a lot of defensive linemen. He works on the interior well when he is on the move. Just traits we don't always associate with a 6'7" recruit. And he's well under 300 pounds, at least last I saw. That's also kind of ideal. That's the sweet spot, 280, 285. That's where a lot of these colleges want their offensive tackle recruits so that they can put on some weight, not as much as we used to anticipate 10, 20 years ago, where it's like, hey, you better be 315 ready to go the day you get to college. Not quite the case. So that's something that I think is another benefit of the doubt getter for this recruit. So, hey, top 10 OT in the country. These are the guys that you got to keep home if you're Iowa, especially when the SEC, and it's not just a Big Ten kind of battle. When those schools come calling, that puts it up a notch from an importance perspective. But look, Bricks is in state, as you mentioned, and I'm sure he's really familiar with Iowa. So the sooner the better from a decision-making standpoint. And most of those guys want to come off the board before their senior season. So we'll see who else gets involved, but you got to like Iowa staying in this fight.
As long as it doesn't turn into a Caden Proctor situation at the 11th hour. That one's tough.
I wasn't going to bring him up.
Yeah. It always lingers in the back of the mind when we're talking recruiting. Hey, John Garcia, always fun catching up with you. Do your homework on Brevin and just hit me up with a DM or something, and we'll have you on again soon. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you, Trent. Appreciate you having me.
John Garcia joining us. Find him on Twitter at John Garcia_Jr. Always great talk with him as we talk a little Iowa football and some recruiting as we look forward to 2024. Well, as we wrap things up on the other side, we're going to talk more football. Spring football is underway. We will get into the depth charts that were released. Had some thoughts earlier in the week. You can certainly go back and look at those if you missed any of them. We're going to take a look at what we have with the depth charts. That's as we come back here on Locked On Hawkeyes. The Built March Madness bracket is here. We know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now it's time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. Now, I'm going to be on the brownie bar puff. It is amazing. It tastes like a candy bar. It is so good. And if you want the Hawkeyes to win, then you'll be voting for that bar too. Support your team. That's right. Support your bar or your puff. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entering into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners are going to get a free box of Built. Not only that, one Locked On fan is going to get a 12-month subscription to Built and have Built's best bars or puffs delivered straight to their door monthly. You got to try Built. Built, the best protein bar ever. Seriously, so amazing, you won't even think they're good for you. What makes them so good? Well, we talk about it every time. It's the 100% real chocolate, high in protein, low in sugar, all so good. Right now, head there. BuiltMarchMadness.com. Built with a T, MarchMadness.com, and vote for your favorite bar or puff. Pick up a box while you're there. You can thank me later. Trent Condon back with you one final time here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks to John Garcia for stopping by. Always fun talking recruiting with him. So mention the depth chart. We're going to continue to break these things down a little bit more as we get deeper and deeper into the spring. A couple other nuggets that jumped out. Some names. Certainly Eric All being up there right away, coming off the back injury that he had. That is big to see him out there. He's been going through. Kirk Ferentz talked about that the other day. Good to see him out there. He's running around coming off the back surgery. He was ice skating when he's back home in Cincinnati. So that's really good to see. I mean, you think of that 1-2 punch they're going to have at the tight end position with Luke Lachey and Eric All. Wide receivers, they stink right now. I mean, there's huge question marks. Obviously, we get that. We've talked about that. But with Lachey and All, there is a building block. Offensive line, some names out there. Dejon Parker is on there. I got a lot. Hey, what happened to Rusty Fett? He will not be on the depth chart. He's not going to be with the program until he graduates from Miami of Ohio and before he makes his way on campus in early June. He'll be part of the group that comes in, along with most of the true freshmen that come in there in early June. That's when he's going to be on campus. Same thing for Nick Jackson, the linebacker from Virginia. and we go over to the defensive side of the football, and that's another thing that jumps out to you too. I mean, you look at this defensive side, middle linebacker Jay Higgins. Great. Jay Higgins, like what we saw, I thought he took some huge, huge step forwards a year ago from a guy that looked like good special teamer, can fill in a pinch. He turned himself into a good Big Ten player a year ago. And you think he's going to build upon that even more as he makes the move into the middle, taking over for Jack Campbell. And then, well, guys that we just really haven't seen a whole lot. Carson Sherrar, got some friends from Iowa Falls. There's been a ton of buzz about this kid going back to high school. Kyler Fisher, he's been around for a while, longtime special teamer. Well, the opportunity certainly is in front of them. And then, an intriguing prospect too, and Kelby Tellender from North Liberty, went to Liberty High School right there in the Iowa City area, and a young man that was a kid captain and now has an opportunity not just to wear the black and gold, but be out there and possibly play, help out a little bit. That's going to be a fun one to watch. So there's an opportunity there. What they're going to do, obviously, at the cash position with Sebastian Castro, that's something that you look at. And then the depth at cornerback. I think that's another place that Iowa still needs to look in the transfer portal. Great to see Jamari Harris back there. I think he can be a big-time impact player. I mean, you put Harris on one side, DeJean on the other. You got two good-sized corners, guys that are physical, guys that can tackle. And now we need to see the development out of the TJ Halls, the Deshaun Lees of the world. That is what we're going to be looking at. And the other thing, that defensive line, boy, are they loaded. Just from the starters, Deontay Craig, Noah Shannon, Logan Lee, Joe Evans. And then the backups, Aaron Graves, Y.A. Black, Ethan Herkett, and Max Llewellyn. And there's another 3 or 4 guys he put in there, including bringing in the JUCO transfer, Thompson. He'll be coming in. There's going to be even more. It's just, this team is loaded up front. This defense has a chance to be really good again this season. It's going to be a fun year of defensive football for Iowa. Offensively, well, we will still have to see. We will see you tonight after Iowa goes final against Colorado. We got an Iowa Instant Reaction Women's podcast that'll be coming back into your feed after we wrap things up. Hopefully, we'll be punching our ticket to the Elite 8. That game will be played on Sunday. Tip time still to be determined, but as soon as we get them, of course, we'll pass them along to you. Keep an eye out. We got you covered. Iowa, Colorado. Enjoy it. 6:30 tip-off on ESPN. The Sweet 16 is here. We'll talk to you again soon. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast.